The revolution is real, it's live, and as some comrades say, it's lit, right? lit, lit, lit. Real, live, lit, 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 right? The revolution is lit.
In North St. Louis have a new place to show off their skills. Today was the grand opening of a new basketball court at College Avenue and West Florissant. The court is a project from the Black Power Blueprint, a community-driven initiative to acquire and redevelop properties in North St. Louis. Organizers say it's all a part of a larger plan for economic development and self-empowerment in North City neighborhoods.
And we say uhuru because it does mean freedom. Because we believe that freedom is something that should be on the minds of black people 24 hours a day. That's what we're struggling for. That's what this basketball court is about.
Today's grand opening celebration also included food, music, and giveaways for the entire community.
Uhuru, comrades, and welcome to today's Omali Taught Me Sunday Study Live with the leader of the African nation, Chairman Omali Yeshitela. You just saw a small clip of the powerful grand opening of the Black Power Vanguard's basketball court in Northside St. Louis, a project of the Black Power Blueprint. Want to salute the profound leadership of Chairman Omali Yeshitela and the Black Power Blueprint architect, Deputy Chair Onazine Yeshitela, that beautiful basketball court that has opened up to the African community as part of the process of empowering politically and economically the African community in North St. Louis and throughout the world. Wow, what an incredible, I was not able to be in St. Louis, but I'm so jealous being able to see just how incredibly powerful that looked, and all of the people that were out on yesterday, the ribbon cutting. Just really want to salute the profound work. And that is a testament of the work, the history, and the leadership of Chairman Omali Yeshitela that's been provided for more than now 50 years for the African liberation struggle. So really want to salute that incredible work, comrades. And for today's study, we're going to be resuming the reading of Chapter 3 of Chairman Omali's political report to the party's 7th Congress, titled Vanguard, the Advanced Detachment of the African Revolution. Chapter 3 deals with how the party survived the counterinsurgency, still an important lesson for our time. We'll pick up on page 77 at the subhead, The Rise of the Conscious African Working Class. And you can access the study materials inside the Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter descriptions. We'll begin with the reading from Chairman Omali Yeshitela, then take a brief moment for announcements before going into questions and answers. And before we start, make sure to share this study far and wide. Take a moment right now to like this video, tag your friends, subscribe to our YouTube and Chairman Omali's Twitch channel. Also, throughout the study, we'd like for any donations to go to uhurutours.com/tours donate. So if you're feeling generous, we have a $200 goal to make this Sunday, and you can help us accomplish that by making your contribution to uhurutours.com/donate. Donating to Uhuru Tours today will help to bring the electrifying presentations of Chairman Omali Yeshitela to the Northeast U.S. this fall. Again, that's uhurutours.com/donate. Now, it's my honor to introduce the leader of the African nation and worldwide African revolution, Chairman Omali Yeshitela. Uhuru, Chairman.
Uhuru, thank you so much, Comrade Director Akile. I want to also express my appreciation to all of the people who participate in today's meeting, and especially to comrades, some of whom were here on yesterday for the ribbon cutting, grand opening of the basketball court, and folk have come here from California to be with us, and it was really impressive and really important because in many ways the work that occurred on yesterday, or that was revealed on yesterday with the basketball court, is something that started a long time ago. And as one of the Solidarity Forces stated when he spoke, he's a Solidarity Force, and I hate to go and say he's a donor. He's that too. It's more than just being donors. I can't get used to treating these comrades like donors. We've been in the trenches together for such a long period of time, and just extraordinary struggle. But the comrades mentioned, that they've been a part of this for years and years and years, 30, 40 years in some instances, and so this is a part of a project that's a long time in coming. And I really appreciate the fact that some of them were able to come and take a look at the practical expression of the work that they may have started in Oakland or Berkeley or in San Francisco, California, what have you. I also just wanted to say that you only saw a tiny clip from the grand opening of the Black Power Vanguard basketball court that occurred on yesterday. There was an article also in the local ruling class Colonial newspaper. And what they attempted to do in that article, and what they have attempted to do throughout, is to connect the project of the African People's Education and Defense Fund, which is a nonprofit corporation that has been around for now, 30, 40 years or so. They've tried to give a legal connection to that entity and to the African People's Socialist Party that's been indicted by the United States government. And they've done that in part as a means to try and discredit the work that we've done on the ground here and other places. They've done something like that to us in St. Petersburg, Florida. They've attacked our radio station there, and and the radio station also is a project of the African People's Education Defense Fund, again, which is a nonprofit that has no legal connections to the African People's Socialist Party. But they've used the indictment of me and two other members of the party as a basis for trying to slander, undermine, isolate this important kind of work that we've done. And on yesterday, the article in the local Colonial newspaper, they were up against a serious problem in the sense that there were hundreds of people who came out and participated on yesterday in different ways. Some of them were directly involved. They were at the basketball court. Their children, families were out playing basketball, and some of them were just parked on the side, sitting in their cars, or they brought their chairs. What do you call it when people go to games and stuff, and they tailgating, at the thing? It was incredible. And one article, it said something like there were 75 people there, and which was, but this is, part of what their job is, and our job, of course, was to make it hard for them to tell certain kinds of lies. So when we had this situation, and they had attempted to characterize this project as something that was facing indictment or connected to an indictment to that, and the FBI was against us and what have you. And the fact that all those people came out is a repudiation of the FBI. It's a repudiation of the charges that they made against us. And also as testimony to the real role that our party and our movement plays in actual life, trying to build and construct a decent and quality life for African people. So that was really important. And if I'd known we were going to show that clip, I wouldn't have. I wore my little shirt that you can't see, with the basketball, Black Power Vanguard basketball team on it, because I wanted, just to celebrate it and to say just how significant it was. And there are people in the room, and Comrade Rage, who he's just an incredible leader on the ground here in St. Louis, and plays such an important role in helping to build it, and who is a leader for this entire region for the African National Women's Organization. And through her presence, the African National Women's Organization was out there playing basketball, along with Jackie Joyner Kersey, so it was just a really impressive kind of thing that was there. And that's part of the fight back. It's counteroffensive, because it also it really exposes what this attack on the party and our movement is all about. Because what has happened is, in a very short period of time, the African People's Socialist Party and the Uhuru movement and various entities connected and influenced by our party and movement has done for this community in St. Louis. We've made an assault on this horrible, even articulated at one time in the form of a program attack that they call benign neglect. That's one of the most insidious that's happening in the country in terms of gentrification and things like that. In a very short period of time, we have begun a process of rehabilitation. We have begun a process that has not only mobilized and given African people an opportunity to see the future. And this is the horrible thing, that they try to lock us up in situations where the future cannot be seen, cannot be perceived. And that was one of the things that was so powerful, in my view, about Jackie Joyner's presence too, because she's an extraordinary athlete. I've read about her, and she's been described as the most, how did they put it, the greatest athlete in the world. From right in St. Louis, you think about that, and you think about the kind of crud that's been dropped on people, and she had to crawl through all of that to become who she is. And you think about, if it were not there, how many Jackie Joyners there would be, et cetera. So it's really important what we've done and what we've exposed, and how we've exposed that the role by what we do, we expose what the government does not do. And there is a basketball court there that the city had nothing to do with providing for the people. And we've exposed a different kind of relationship that white people and African people can have. That's not based on some empty sloganeering, like, combating racism, et cetera. We've thrown that out, and help people to understand that our problem is not some idea of whether white people like us or not. The fact is that it wouldn't matter if white people didn't like us if we had the power. White people don't necessarily like China. They learn to like China more and more every day because China has power. So that's the thing that we're pursuing. And I think that's one of the big problems they have in such a short period of time. We don't even have access to our own tax monies, right? And we've initiated a relationship, an honest relationship between Africans and North Americans that is responsible for this. And of course, the leadership of Comrade Director Onezene Ishitela cannot be understated. So I just wanted to say that. Uhuru. I also have to, in every instance, I have an opportunity, we come together like this. It's important to acknowledge those brothers and sisters, especially those who are not in the United States, who don't have easy access to us. And especially that's true on the continent of Africa, but it's also true in the Caribbean too. People don't have good internet infrastructure is not there. That's what colonialism does. It sucks out all the resources and transfers those resources. I mean, think about this. You look at Africa, 87% of all the coltan that's in the world that's necessary for making computers and cell phones and things like that. And then you've got cobalt, and you've got all these other kinds of resources coming out of Africa. But there is no meaningful infrastructure there. Africans don't have access to Steve Jobs' products or our resources like a Steve Jobs has had access to those. And so, you know, for the brothers and sisters on the continent of Africa, just to be connected with each other and with us in various places, it's real difficult. I know for certainty that there are groups of folk from our party, from our movement on the continent who are watching this collectively. So even if even so, I mean, you look at what they call South Africa now, and they only have brief moments of the day where there's actual electricity, where electricity is available. I mean, that's the kind of situation we're living with. It's extraordinary. So I know that you're there. And I happen to see, and I call on everybody, and somebody can put it in the chat how this can occur. But I saw on yesterday, I think it was, perhaps it was early this morning, Comrade Asa Ampu from our party, who was leading political education right there on the ground in the township. And where was that? Was that Everton West, or was that was Everton West? And is doing political education right out in the community and what have you, which is what we do, and helping African people to grapple with some of these critical questions, not just anything. I mean, they're talking about dialectics on the ground. This guy provides just this astounding, you know, really profound political education. Everybody should be watching that. And I want us to make it easily accessible so that more and more people everywhere can see the kind of work that's happening on the continent, the kind of political education they can have access to coming from our party in various places. So I just wanted to acknowledge that and thank everybody for being here. So we're going to start again. We're going to begin on page 77 of the chapter 3 of the political report to our 7th Congress, and we're at the subhead titled "The Rise of the Conscious African Working Class." And again, this has to do with how the party survived the counterinsurgency, and we might say it's basketball courts and things like this. You know, there's a poor stab at a joke, but I just remember Fred Hampton. Some years ago, he was making the statement because Fred Hampton, many of you know from the Black Panther Party, he was the chair of the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party. He was the one who initiated the free breakfast programs for the Black Panther Party that, you know, spread every place. And he was saying how, you know, connecting with the masses is so important. It's the same thing that Cabral, you know, has mentioned, that the people not joining us for fancy ideas and things like that. It's to making change in the lives of the people and concretely. And Fred made the statement that, you know, the people in the community might say, well, I don't know anything about dialectics, and I don't know anything, you know, about communism and revolution, but don't put your hands on that breakfast program. You understand? And so that's really powerful, really significant. So people have an opportunity to experience directly, materially put their hands on African internationalism. It's not just some abstract, purely abstract idea. They can touch it, they can dribble it, they can shoot it, they can participate in changing their community. That's the thing. That's what we represent. And what our oppressors would do if we allow them, is to define what we're about in some kind of negative abstraction that can frighten the people and what have you. But the people were not afraid. I saw a 3-year-old and out there with a basketball bigger than him. And Comrade was telling me, or one of the solidarity forces was telling me that he was outside the basketball court, outside the fence, and the ball went across the fence, and he picked up the ball, right, to throw it across, and this 3-year-old saw him with the ball and said, "What are you doing with our ball?" Right? Yeah, throw the ball back, right? And so I thought that was really powerful. This is, don't put your hands on that basketball court, right? And we had a similar experience. People here remember when we were making renovations at the Hoodoo House in Oakland, California. And we had people who had come there and were taking down, the large portraits that we had of Huey P. Newton and Marcus Garvey and Lumumba and Nkrumah. And these are people just working there to take them down so they could refurbish them. And people stopped and say, "What are you doing with those? What are you doing with those?" I mean, those belong to the people. That's the connection. And that's why we cannot allow them to say that they're attacking Omali Yeshitela or the African People's Social Party and the Uhuru movement. They're attacking Black people. And African people recognizing that and are saying that as well. So here we are on page 77, and the rise of the conscious African working class. The need for change was aptly summed up by the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee in its slogan, "Demand for Black Power," coming in 1966 after the petty bourgeois-led civil rights movement had realized its aims with the enactment of the Civil Rights Bill in 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Petty bourgeoisie had realized its aim, but what has happened is that the bourgeoisie, the rulers of this country now say, well, the civil rights movement's over, you're free now. That's what they're doing with Juneteenth. So they can say Juneteenth, now it's one of the most important holidays, one of the most important holidays in this country. We can celebrate the murder of and birth of Martin Luther King. You're free now. It's over. But here you are, still struggling. That means you're an anomaly. That means something is wrong with you. You understand? You're an aberration. That's part of how counterinsurgency looks overall. So they create this thing. And so, and because the African petty bourgeoisie was not fighting to overturn the social system or overturn the relationship we have with colonialism. Because, anyway, I will move it forward. The outcome of the alliance was something that neither the liberal bourgeoisie or the Black petty bourgeoisie could predict. We talk about an alliance that had emerged during this whole struggle between the liberal sector of the African petty bourgeoisie and the bourgeoisie proper, the colonizer and the colonized. It came to this unity. So neither of them could predict the outcome of this. The thing is that this movement of oppressed people exploding all around the world inside this country. And in many instances, it was influenced in a very serious way by what was happening inside this country. And so their objective was to win rights for themselves as a social force. But every class, conscious of its interest and its existence as a class, speaks. When it speaks for the class, it speaks for everybody. So you don't hear one of these persons who's saying, well, this is just for me and the petty bourgeoisie. They say this is for Black people. That I represent Black people. I don't represent the petty bourgeoisie. When I called in the National Guards to come in and attack a community in the 3rd Ward in St. Louis, as one of the older persons did, I'm not doing this as a sector of the petty bourgeoisie. I'm not doing this to the African working class. I'm doing this as a Black person fighting for Black people. So they're conscious of their own aims. It's just generally too often the class that we represent, the African petty bourgeoisie, the most victimized, the most slandered class, is not conscious of what its interests are. That's part of what the work we do. That's part of what this study is about. That's part of what the studies that's being led right there in the townships in occupied Azania is about. So we said the outcome of this alliance was something that neither the liberal bourgeoisie nor the Black petty bourgeoisie could predict, namely the emergence of an African proletariat rising up from the bowels of America itself, as we observed in Advanced Detachment. So while the selfish interests of the African working class proved to be in contradiction to the aims of colonial white power, they were also in contradiction with the interests and aims of the black petty bourgeoisie. We noted again this in advance. So the African, the bourgeoisie, the colonial powers were opposed to what was happening with the Black Power movement. But it was not just the petty bourgeoisie, the colonizer, but the African petty bourgeoisie was opposed to it as well. So, and we noted this in Advanced Detachment, an inconsistent, though generally materialist philosophy of black nationalism began to emerge out of the aims of the African working class. Black nationalism began to reject the idealist and obscurantist philosophy of the liberal black petty bourgeoisie, Martin Luther King's dream of a better day in America as a consequence of the moral regeneration of whites of the oppressor nation was challenged by the nightmare as defined by Malcolm X. The African proletariat facing objective reality in America raised the demand for black power to determine our own black reality. I mean, that's a real departure from this whole idealist thing to make white people like us, which is the whole anti-racist thing. You got a movement, anti-colonial movement is a movement for power. So we want power over our own lives. We want to be the ones who will determine our future, our reality, where it is that we want to go. So we don't want to have this dependency on whether white people going to like us today or tomorrow. People like you today and leave you tomorrow. That's why you have such a high rate of divorce. You know, indeed, the Black Power slogan demand captured the reality for the entire African nation within the United States and the world. Inside the United States during this period, every African community was literally on fire with rebellion and anti-colonial resistance. It was an anti-colonial demand that challenged the limitations of the call for equality and rights within the colonial relationship. Anti-colonial demand challenged the limitations of the call for equality and rights within the colonial relationship. See, and that's the thing that many people don't recognize. You have a colonial relationship. If you don't recognize the existence of colonialism, you're not armed to fight against colonialism. What do you fight for? You fight for rights within the colonial relationship. You're enslaved, you're on a plantation, and you're fighting for rights on the damn plantation. Nat Turner was talking about strike at night and spare no one. You know, destroy this relationship is what has to happen. But you have to recognize it exists before you can do that. And if you talk about its existence, then it means that you are sowing discord. You're disrupting the peace, and you're working for some other entity out there in the world. And to an extent, this is absolutely correct, because what is happening is you are working against the interests of the colonial relationship. So you say, I'm not trying to find a better way on the damn plantation. I'm not trying to find a better way under colonialism. I'm saying we have to end this relationship we have with colonialism, right? So the Black Power demand gave a taste of political power to the masses of African people everywhere. As we continue in Advanced Detachment, for the new generation of fully mobilized African workers that was thrust onto the scene as the main social factor in U.S. political life, its aspirations were far from being met by gaining legal democratic rights. The main social factor, African workers, Black people living in housing projects and stuff like that, not professors, you know, not the most educated and whatever. These are the people, the most important social factors. That was the thing they had to contain. That's why they had to create SWAT teams and stuff like that, not to deal with the professors and the preachers, but to deal with the most important, significant social factor, which is the African working class. And we said African working class, they may not have been in the union, they might not have even been employed. And some people confuse the question of whether somebody is unionized. They think they're working with the workers because somebody is working with the unions. Masses of African people never been unionized and sometimes hate the unions based on the fact of how unions have been used against us under the leadership of colonizers, right? So the attempts by the petty bourgeoisie to moderate the Black liberation movement, to decelerate it and direct it towards liberal bourgeois democratic Souths were met with cries of burn, baby, burn in Los Angeles and Black Power in Mississippi. At this point, and at this point, the independent aspiration of the African working class became clear. This new clarity fueled efforts to build independent political parties by and for the colonially oppressed African population. I was in Los Angeles, California in 1965. The Watts Rebellion happened there. And when the Watts Rebellion happened, the colonizers parachuted into Watts in Los Angeles different petty bourgeois leaders. And Dick Gregory was one of them. I was there. And Dick Gregory came out and he was telling the people, you know, go home, and he's been real clever, take the women and children home, so et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And people shot him. These Africans really shot him. So they had to drag him home. And then they parachuted in Dr. Martin Luther King himself, Will Rogers Park, Martin Luther King, and Africans booed him off the stage. There's a whole big old thing that was happening, and the masses. The most important social factor was not the preachers, was not the professors and big shots. It was ordinary working class people who don't want to live like this anymore, just like those who were on Canfield Drive here in St. Louis a while ago. So we explained. So at this point, the independent aspiration of the African working class became clear. This new clarity fueled efforts to build independent political parties by and for the colonially oppressed African population. We explained further in the 1998 presentation that we call The Wolf and the Double-Edged Blade, published in Omali Ishitella Speaks. Our movement emerged as an anti-colonial movement at the moment the issue became one of power. When Africans workers said Black Power, they united with the struggles like the ones being led by Che Guevara throughout Latin America and Africa. By 1967, we saw the rise of the Black Panther Party, which took the struggle even further. The Black Panther Party was immediately and explicitly informed and influenced by Malcolm X, who told us that since it's legal to have a shotgun, every African should have one in his or her house, right? And of course, when the Panthers, with the emergence of the Black Panther Party, we saw the tremendous anxiety in this country, so much so that J. Edgar Hoover, who was then the executive director of the FBI, which is one of the secret political police agencies in this country, characterized the Black Panther Party as the greatest threat to the internal security of the United States since the Civil War. So, I mean, I guess the threats changed from generation to generation, the greatest threats. But at this time, they said the Black Panther Party was the greatest threat. And I think it's worth noting also that we talk about legality. It's legal to vote, right? Yet they say that we somehow broke the law voting and running for office. It was supposed to become legal in 1965 with passage of the Voting Rights Act. In fact, people are celebrating today because the Supreme Court appeared to have said, stood up and held up the Voting Rights Act of 1965 in Alabama just now. When they said you can't do this kind of redistricting, now everybody, wait, ACLU, whoa, look at this great victory we just won. But that's the same ACLU that stood by when they bombed my house. In 1963, they were bombing churches in Birmingham, Alabama. In 2022, they're bombing my house in St. Louis, Missouri. So where is the Voting Rights Act? What are you talking about? Since they said we're in great shape now because they said that they have to restrict that they have to respect the damn districts that they've created. They haven't said they don't respect the districts here. They say the only way you can vote is and run for office is if you do it the way we want you to do it. Other than that, you ain't got no rights, and even that's shaky. So anyway, we talk about the Black Panther Party and how Malcolm raised that question, and then the Black Panther Party that Malcolm said since it's legal, Black Panther Party said, okay, it's legal. They didn't break the law when they picked up the gun, but the state of California started moving to take the gun away because the Black Panther Party have begun to organize Black people to carry the gun legally to patrol and what the police was doing to us in these communities. And they said, hey, let's make it illegal. They said, let's make it illegal. That's why the Black Panther Party marched into the state capitol in Sacramento, not Sacramento, but in Sacramento, in a demonstration with guns. So the law is the opinion of the ruling class, not just in general terms, but also in specific instances, right? And so they say, okay, legally you can vote, but you can't. Legally you can have guns, but you can't. Right? This is how the thing works when you look at the relationship between colonized and the colonizers. So again, the Black Panther Party was defined as the greatest threat to the internal security of the United States since the Civil War. Not Gaddafi, who they end up murdering. Not Hussein, who they end up lynching. Not the Russians, who they don't mess with, because the Russians, not directly anyway, because the Russians have their own capacity to speak to them. So they would raid us. We used to say here sometimes jokingly that they got the worst GPS. Is that what you call a GPS? System since Columbus, right? So they can't distinguish St. Petersburg, Russia from St. Petersburg, Florida, right? That's what it is that we're looking at. So there's the Russians here. So, but they're talking about ordinary African working class people, most of whom lived in the housing projects and had to use public transportation to get from one part of the city to the other. And Redbeard knows this because they was catching the bus that he was driving. Ain't that right, Redbeard? And sometimes we take a transfer and we share it with each other so that people can afford to be on public transportation, as they called it. So that's a statement about where power can be found in the masses of African workers and poor people who, given organization and ideological clarity, can achieve anything. Who, given organization and ideological clarity, can achieve anything. That's why ideological clarity has to be defined as sowing public discord and working for Russians, because they don't want the people to have ideological clarity and organization. So that's the thing that Hoover and the FBI recognized. And unfortunately, not too many of our leaders today recognize that. We know that the Black Revolution, once unleashed, gave rise to virtually every other progressive entity that sprung up in this country. It was the Black Revolution that took white women out of the kitchen and homosexuals out of the closet. It was the Black Revolution that energized the movements of other oppressed peoples, including indigenous peoples in this country. It was a powerful and profound movement that shook this country to its very foundation. This is why the government put in place a program to cut down and undermine the Black Revolution and assassinate our leaders. They created what we refer to as counterinsurgency. Counterinsurgency uses every form of attack. Psychological warfare. The CIA even purchased the rights, movie rights of certain books, like Animal Farm, about George Orwell and what have you, other kinds of things like that, to shape and mold the consciousness of what people thought about different things in this country and around the world. I'm told that they even were responsible for Motown during the height of this, the uprising and things happening in this country, pushing this, what do they call it, dancing in the streets? Is that what the name of that song was? Dancing in the streets. Africans already knew about how to do that. They were engaged in that already, so they were dancing in the streets, as you know, that kind of thing. So just to change the discussion, change the channel, if you will, and have, you know, influence how people thought about stuff. Psychological warfare was a really incredibly significant part of what was dealing with us. And now, you know, you got what's his name, the guy something Berg, who controls the social media, the Facebook, Zuckerberg, and all these other people participating in the same kind of process to determine what you think, you know, and what you can have a right to think. I mean, think about this. I mean, I mentioned George Orwell. He's the guy who wrote the book 1984. And he made this very important kind of statement. I think I liked quoting him. He said, "Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past." You understand? So what you think, how you perceive what happened in the past, whoever can control that can control what the future looks like. And so that's why when we try to break out of this encirclement, this ideological and propaganda encirclement, they can attack us. And they don't attack us right up by saying that we're attacking you because you using your free speech. They say you weaponize free speech. What in the hell is that? And free speech is a weapon. But they created it as a weapon in response to what they said was England's domination of them. They said that as opposed to having kings and et cetera telling us what to do, when we can do it, et cetera, and what you can say, we demand free speech. Down with the king. And Joe Biden forgot it because he's up there talking about long live the queen. Well, they didn't say down with the queen, you understand? But so this is, yeah, Joe Biden did that. He's in another century someplace. Oh boy, bless a little pumpkin head. So counterinsurgency, every form of attack, psychological warfare, actual armed struggle, economic warfare, counterinsurgency. The name of the government's counterinsurgency against the Black Revolution, I should say, more accurately, say one expression of the counterinsurgency that we've come to be most familiar with is COINTELPRO, short for Counterintelligence Program. COINTELPRO was the program used to assassinate and imprison our leaders and destroy our organizations. So it's a really limited definition when we just say this COINTELPRO, because it was much bigger than COINTELPRO, much bigger than that FBI expression. That was one arm. And I'm not sure that they don't tell us about, let us know about COINTELPRO in order to obscure all the other stuff they were doing to us, you know, including, you know, especially the CIA. You know, that was, you know, capturing people and using mind control, psychological weapons against people. That they were using actual drugs, LSD and things like that. And this is something that's recorded as well, you know. So the COINTEL, but it's important for us to know the objectives here that were spelled out here by August 25th, 1967 memorandum sent by the FBI to field offices throughout the U.S. and telling in its slander, lies, and efforts to criminalize and set the Black Revolution up for violence and assault. And this is how this memorandum went out to the field offices, to the offices in St. Louis, to the field offices in St. Petersburg, Florida, and other places. This is what the headquarters of the FBI was saying them. It says, the purpose of this new counterinsurgency endeavor is to expose, they said this is directly from their memorandum. The purpose of this new counterinsurgency endeavor is to expose, disrupt, misdirect, discredit, or otherwise neutralize the activities of Black nationalist hate-type organizations and groupings, their leadership, spokesmen, membership, and supporters, and to counter their propensity for violence and civil disorder. What in the hell is a propensity for violence and civil disorder? It's what they want it to be, right? They said they ain't done nothing, but they got a propensity for this. Why? Because they are Black nationalist hate groups. That's why. And this, by the way, is sent to agents, and this informs these little silly agents, right? These little dummies who are running around with these, at the time, and their little suits and ties and crew cuts, you know, et cetera. So they're reading this, and they have to deal with these these people with this propensity for violence, and they don't know nothing about Black people. And this is the reality. They don't know nothing about it. It's just like we live in North St. Louis, and white people who live in South St. Louis don't know a damn thing about Black people. And they didn't, that's where they came from. And for the longest period of time, the FBI was lily white. The first time they brought somebody into the organization was during the Garvey era. And then even after that, it was mostly a white thing, and people wore their suits and ties, et cetera, until it became so obvious and outstandingly, what is this guy doing here? Throw the damn basketball across the fence. That kind of stuff happened. They had to look different, right? So here is how the memorandum continues. The activities of such groups of intelligence interests to the Bureau must be followed on a continuous basis, so we will be in a position to promptly take advantage of all opportunities for counterinsurgency and inspire action in instances where circumstances warrant. Do you think our lawyers need to be having FBI agents on the witness stand and saying, when did y'all stop this? You understand? I mean, this is their document. Here's what they say. The pernicious background of such groups, their duplicity and devious maneuvers must be exposed to public scrutiny, where such publicity will have a neutralizing effect. Efforts of the various groups to consolidate their forces or to recruit new or youthful adherents must be frustrated. No opportunity should be missed to exploit through counterintelligence techniques the organizational and personal conflicts of the leadership of the groups, and where possible, an effort should be made to capitalize upon existing conflicts between competing Black nationalist organizations. When an opportunity is apparent to disrupt or neutralize Black nationalist hate-type organizations through cooperations of established local news media contacts, or through such contacts with sources available to the seat of government, which is Hoover's office, in every instance, careful attention must be given to the proposal to ensure the targeted group is disrupted, ridiculed, or discredited through the publicity and not merely publicized. And this is why they have to write about basketball teams when they can, basketball courts, and whatever they say about us in a fashion. If they can't stop it from being written about, then you do it in a way that's going to ridicule them. You do it in a way that's going to undermine them, hold them up in a fashion that doesn't simply publicize what it is they're doing. So they can write an article, and the guys try to carry out their mission. We make it harder for them to carry out their mission. It's harder for them to carry out their mission when the whole world can see something different. You know, so when all the Black people are out here, for them to just write this whole negative thing that does not say that this is what this meant for the Black community, it becomes complicated because it exposes them. So they can say this is what it meant for the Black community, but these are people are connected to the FBI, some kind of working for the FBI and unindictment. The political structures within which the U.S. that was what we wanted to quote from the memorandum from the FBI to through their offices throughout the country. So the political structures within which the U.S. domestic anti-colonial struggle was being waged came under siege. In the mid-60s, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, briefly became the center of anti-colonial resistance within the United States. In the meantime, with the rise of African national consciousness, of the African working class-led movement, other anti-colonial organizations began an outright challenge to confining the African struggle to civil rights or rights within the colonial capitalist system. Some of you who are familiar with it will remember how Malcolm X was saying that you can't contain your struggle around the question of civil rights, because when you do the civil rights, you're in this guy's house. So you got to deal with human rights. And of course, what Malcolm was responding to was the fact that the human rights had become something that had been pushed onto the United Nations agenda and had begun to define human rights. And this is based on the assumption that international law was applicable to everybody, although the United States has never recognized international law when it was inconvenient. And so we say that, so these movements started an outright challenge to confining the struggle of our people to civil rights or rights within the colonial capitalist system. This is what the anti-colonial movement did. It said, we're not going to define it like that anymore. We're not trying to find a better place on the plantation. We're not talking about sitting on the toilet next to white people. It was the craziest stuff. I mean, we had whole people. We saw African people saying, here you're trying to talking about integrating a goddamn restaurant and you don't have one of your own. And if you get in, you ain't got no money. And so your struggle has to be something other than that. But they want to keep it that. They say your struggle is for integration. But the oppressed cannot determine integration. The oppressed cannot set the terms for integration. How the hell the oppressed going to integrate with anybody? The fact is only the oppressor has the ability to integrate. And now I see more and more, I've read articles within the last 2 or 3 years, how they see greater integration in the United States than they've seen before. They see growing integration. What do they call integration? What do they call integration? What they call integration is what we call gentrification. So they're pushing blacks, more white people now living where you live now. Because the oppressed do not have the ability. They say you can do this, you have the right to do this, but you can't do it. You have no means with which to do it. Right? So it takes a white guy with a pickup truck on the clipboard riding through your community, taking addresses and what have you, and picking up code violations to integrate, you know? Ain't that something? And then here you come. So among these groups were the Hunter Militant Organization, JOMO, and Black Panther Party, the African People's Party, and the Provisional Government of the Republic of New Africa, were others. These organizations and the Revolutionary Action Movement, RAM, were influenced ideologically by Malcolm X, who had left the original Nation of Islam in a split that divided the group between religious obscurantists, philosophical idealists, and the growing materialist influence, revolutionary ideology and practice being promoted by Malcolm X. And I don't want to be dismissive of the original Nation of Islam, because they were those things in terms of, like being religious obscurantists and stuff like that. But they had one foot in a materialist camp. They said they are the nation of Islam, the nation of Islam, which gave a different category and definition of the struggle and integrating into the white man's system. We are a nation of our own. And it's mischaracterized when you talk about Islam and stuff like that, but that was what they were dealing with. And it was the Nation of Islam, under the original Nation of Islam, under Elijah Muhammad, was saying, do for self, right? Do for self, which is a kind of development from Booker T. Washington, cast down your buckets where you are in a certain way. Too young to know about that, but I am too, but I read about it. So the masses of African people were part of the wave of anti-colonial struggles sweeping the planet. The chains of colonial domination were being shattered everywhere. Kenya, Korea, Ghana, Congo, Vietnam, Cuba, Grenada, Algeria, Oakland, California, and St. Petersburg, Florida. The colonial capitalist ruling class had been defeated politically and ideologically within the United States and throughout the world. Politically and ideologically, they couldn't hold their own. That's why they don't want us to talk, because they cannot defend themselves against us ideologically and politically. In these communities, they can't defend themselves against us politically. So they use the police, they use the law, and other kinds of things like that, because they're incapable of defending themselves politically and ideologically from this movement. And so part of that defeat was to be seen in the creation of independent political organizations. The Pan-Africanist Congress of Azani is an example. But there was also the Kenyan Land and Freedom Army, Mau Mau, Zimbabwe African National Union, Black Panther Party, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, New Jewel Movement of Grenada, JOMO, and African People's Socialist Party. Many others developed in Africa and worldwide. Their main significance lay in the fact that they represented the intention of the colonized to seek solutions for ourselves outside of the structures and political and ideological framework of the colonizers. They had won the support and participation of the broad masses of the hundreds of millions of colonized Africans and others determined to end our relationship with foreign colonial domination. Comrades, while many of our people have been convinced that our colonial oppression is due to so-called racist whites or the colonizers simply not liking us, the fact is that the entire success of the colonizers, all the wealth, happiness, and democratic rights enjoyed by them, require our colonization. In other words, there has always been a material basis for our oppression to which the colonial hatred and brutality owe their existence. The colonial capitalists lost the political and ideological authority over our colonized communities. The U.S. government's political and ideological defeat left the colonizers with only one logical response: military attack, extreme violence. This was true all over the world, but this was especially true within the U.S. Here, our movement inside the imperialist center, the headquarters of human oppression and exploitation, inspired the fighting peoples of the world and presented white power with an existential crisis. Because the U.S. front of the Black Revolution of the 60s threatened the very foundation of world capitalism, the U.S. initiated this counterinsurgency with no recognition of our political prisoners, no protocols for the treatment of our prisoners of war, or features of what the colonizer recognized as quote-unquote civilized conduct, much less the admission that the assault on our revolution was indeed a war. And I think this is really important for us to understand, because somebody say, well, they can't think you are so serious because you're such a small and insignificant organization, you know? And the reality is, we're in the center of the thing. I quoted Huey P. Newton, I think a week or so ago, when he was talking about the role that Africans play, how we can stop the whole machine because everything revolves around the United States. The United States is the center of the entire thing. And so here you are, being this disruptive force in the middle of the oppressive world-dominating machine. Yeah, you're important. You're significant. I mean, Nicaragua, only 2 million people in Nicaragua. It was important. It was significant because it's breaking out of the whole colonial framework. And also, they like to talk about, what do they call it, the domino effect. They win in Nicaragua, they win in El Salvador, you know, they win in Honduras, they win all these other places, etc. And if you win in St. Louis, what they call the heart of America, we call it the heartless of America, right? That has profound significance, and sometimes it's much bigger than our own consciousness. Sometimes because the oppressed have the work that's being done to maintain the oppression of people is to really destroy self-confidence and the inability to see your own significance. All right. And so because of that, it's sometimes very difficult for us to recognize what role we play in history. And plus there's, revolutionaries, also, also, experiencing, I think an element of humility, notwithstanding Stokely Starmichael. And I think that is something, and I appreciate that fact, and so sometimes we don't believe in our own significance, and therefore we can't take ourselves seriously. I don't believe the FBI is going to come with tanks and stuff and attack the house. I mean, who the hell are we that they would do such a thing as that? I mean, the only thing we do is selling the newspaper on the streets. Why the hell would they come and with battering rams and grenades and stuff like that, right? That's, and that fact, that was something that somebody said. And if the CIA guy, as I understand it, on some interview that recently, who was in theory opposed to what the FBI has done to us, especially since we are such a small organization of no consequence, right? They just do that to inconsequential organizations. They ain't doing it to anybody else, right? They don't do it to him. He was making these statements, but anyway. So I'm going now into this subtitle here: attacks on Jomo's efforts to build a statewide party. We're still talking about this counterinsurgency that we have had to deal with since our foundation, and this is part of the history of that. So our success in building the party and the fact that our movement survived the counterinsurgency that defeated the Black Revolution in the 60s should not be interpreted to mean that we were untouched by the U.S. counterinsurgency. In Israel to Africa, the political report to our Third Congress, we summed up, what was that? The political report of the Third Congress, what year was that? Israel to Africa, what year would that have been? What? 90 something? Yeah. So we said that it was the resilience of Jomo and the party that denied, this is the 90s, the counterinsurgency its ultimate victory. For although the Black Liberation Movement was destroyed as a movement, the birth of the party in 1972 as a part of the revolutionary continuum was the birth of a political force that was clear on its mission to complete the Black Revolution of the 60s. Our party was founded on May of 1972 by the merger of three previously separate groups. The primary organization of the three was JOMO, the Hunter Militant Organizations based in St. Petersburg, Florida, and Lexington and Louisville, Kentucky. You know where JOMO got its name? Because I was impressed, by the Mau Mau, Kenyan Land Freedom Army. And at the time, people associated Jomo Kenyatta as the leader of that movement, right? Because the British, they had locked him up, put him in prison and stuff like that. But he was a kind of leader of Jesse Jackson type. He was a pain in the butt for them because he was raising certain kinds of issues within the colonial construct and what have you. But the Mau Mau, the Kenyan Land Freedom Army, was led by a man named Dedan Kimathi. Incredible person. It's interesting because I think he was a school teacher. And they built this, it just reminds us of Vietnam, doesn't it? Vo Nguyen Giap, who was also a school teacher, and who Ho Chi Minh called on to go ahead and build the military forces to fight first the French, and they end up having to lead the struggle against the United States as well. So, so the name Jomo was important to us. And so how do you come up with an acronym for JOMO? So, that's how you get the Hunter of Militant Organizations, you understand? A Catholic priest, very negatively, he was a bigwig in the Catholic Church at the time, said to me, and he shouldn't have known, that since it is a Spanish word, you really should call it homo, because the J hunter of militant organization. I didn't say I believe you were probably an expert on this stuff, but I got an expert witness here. I did not say that. I didn't. You're not going to pin me down with that. I know there's somebody out there saying, I told you. But anyway, so that's how we came up, like JOMO. So JOMO, the Hunter Militant Organization based in St. Petersburg, Florida, and Lexington in Louisville, Kentucky. The others were the Black Rights Fighters in Fort Myers and the Black Study Group in Gainesville, Florida. JOMO was the dominant organization by virtue of its political experience, its long history, and its urban working class base and character. The Black Rights Fighter was essentially an organization of migrant farm workers and organizers, and the Gainesville Black Study Group was an organization of community-based students and intellectuals. And Comrade Inyindu is probably in this study right now. He's located in Fort Myers, and he's one of the founding members of the party under the leadership of Lawrence Mann and the Black Rights Fighters there. And he's got stuff that he can tell us about that part of our history, because some of it I had forgotten. They killed Lawrence Mann shortly after, but some of it I had forgotten. And but he's one of the persons that folk are going to have to talk to when we're in the process of developing the history of our party and our movement. So both the climate of political terror directed at the revolution and our own inexperience prevented the use of a founding Congress or some other publicized mass meeting to bring the party into existence. I say our own experience because we were an organization essentially of working class. I mean, in content, not just conceptually, but in content. So we had no experience in building these kinds of things like a Congress that would pull everybody together and what that looks like, et cetera. But the other thing about it that was probably most influential is the terror at this moment that people today wouldn't be familiar with, where the government is trying to go back to in some ways right now. But you could be in a meeting like this meeting that we're having now, and the government, the police would raid the meeting with guns. You could have children in here and what have you. This was a common kind of thing that had begun to happen. And I guess 1996, when they attacked us with 300 strong and bombed attacked the Uhuru House there. And I guess what they're trying to do to us now is similar to what they were doing then. So it's not like if we had announced at this time that we're having a Congress pulling all these revolutionary forces together to complete the Black Revolution in '60. There's no way in hell that we could have got away with bringing people together from everywhere to do that. So earlier JOMO efforts to build a revolutionary party in 1969-70 had been successfully blocked by the U.S. counterinsurgency. Even as the brutal U.S. colonial war was being directed at our movement, JOMO had organized regular monthly meetings of progressive African organizations throughout the state of Florida. It was precisely because JOMO was able to recognize the need to defend our revolution that they saw the monthly meetings as leading to the creation of a statewide party. The June 15, 29, 1970 issue of the Burning Spear, JOMO's political organ at the time, reported on that month's meeting, saying, several Black organizations ended their fourth statewide Black caucus since March on June 6. As a result of the fourth caucus, several things happened. It was decided that JOMO and the Burning Spear are the official information and communication apparatus for the state movement. Sounds like Iskra or something like that, doesn't it? The need and name for a Black political party in the state was established. Details are to be worked out at the next caucus scheduled for Miami. The name of the party is the African Nationalist Progressive Party. The following long selection from East Bay to E Africa is important for what it reveals about the serious anti-democratic and terroristic measures used by the U.S. Bourgeois colonial state to crush our movement and attempt to derail our efforts to build a statewide party. We recounted. However, at the July Miami meeting, one of the meeting participants, whom Jomo came to suspect as a government agent provocateur, how do you say it? Agent provocateur? Successfully fought from an anti-party. In this instance, this just against the whole idea of having a party, from an ultra-leftist position to block the group from consolidating Jomo's party building effort. Then, at the following meeting held in Daytona Beach, the provocateur, in violation of the June decision determining the burning spear as the group's organ, brought an African news reporter from the colonial white ruling class Miami Herald to the meeting. The consequence of this was an article in the white ruling class publications throughout Florida on the morning following the meeting, which told of sinister efforts by members of the Black Liberation Army who were holding secretive meetings planning to kill Whitey. This is in the newspaper the next morning. The fact that the provocateur admitted authoring the article. He wrote the article. He brought an African reporter from the Miami Herald with him. When we confronted, he said, I wrote the article. He wrote the article because he felt we needed the publicity. And that the group refused to expel him for this blatant and dangerous provocation meant that the government was successful in having the statewide meetings down the line. Couldn't have those meetings anymore. Later, a listing for the non-existing African Nationalist Progressive Party in the Miami telephone directory gave the address and the phone number of the provocateur who had blocked the movement toward the creation of that organization. Such was the progressive political atmosphere during the period. I could tell you stories about this guy and that, but I know we don't have the time, Comrade Director. But it was serious. I mean, it was very, 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 very serious. I mean, yeah. In fact, on January 10th, 1973, within 8 months of the party's founding, Lawrence Mann, a member of the Central Committee, party co-founder and leader of the Black Rights Fighters, was assassinated by automobile accident, if you will. This act disrupted the effectiveness of our efforts to consolidate other members of the Black Rights Fighters into the party. Then in May of 1973, right? In May of 1973, so January 1973, Lawrence Mann is killed. They've already disrupted the efforts to create the statewide party. January, Lawrence Mann is killed. And then May 1973, the government arrested and re-imprisoned me at Florida State Prison on the oil mural charge, the one that they arrested me for in 66. And as a SNCC member in December 1966. However, our young party was able to mount a fierce resistance to my re-imprisonment and forced the government to release me within 2 months. But the government was not finished. After having attacked our newly founded party at 2 of its 3 legs, Fort Myers with the murder of Lawrence Mann, and St. Petersburg with my arrest and re-imprisonment, the colonial bourgeoisie attacked the party in Gainesville in June 1973. This attack came in the form of a concerted effort to chase Couture Carey, a Central Committee member and party co-founder, out of the city. Born and reared in Virginia, Carey was fired from a job as a school teacher, having been isolated by outright FBI slander, which accused Carey of keeping a cache of weapons. The FBI had established a campaign of terrorizing Carey's neighbors in the rural community where she lived. they used also the fact that she was a teacher of elementary children in a place called Alachua, Florida. And they used the fact that she she had on her this board where teachers put up these things on the board to the children. I forgot what you call them now. A poem. What shall I tell my children who are black? I forgot who the poet was. We knew her though. She was out of Chicago. Gwendolyn Brooks. They used the fact that she had the poem up, what shall I tell my children who are black? And this is one of the reasons, for mounting this attack against her. So this effort was led by the FBI, who were going to even her roommate. They went to her roommate and told the roommate that Carrie was, you all right. We know you cool. And we think Couture Carrie is all right too, but she's hanging out with these dangerous people and what have you. She's keeping guns and things like that for them, and scared her. And she had political ambitions, the roommate, that were finally realized in that area. I mean, she went into some kind of political office later. This effort was led by the FBI and a North American former principal at a predominantly African high school who had become a city commissioner. And the high school was called something like Mountaintop. And it was named for the speech by Martin Luther King. I can't remember this guy's name right now. This city commissioner, who had functioned in the military as a counterinsurgency expert and had written manuals on counterinsurgency, which were in the local public libraries, used counterinsurgency expertise and connections and his positions as city commissioner to launch this attack on Carrie. The consolidation of the party through a merger based primarily on quiet meetings between the leaders and members of the three merging groups instead of through a publicly announced Congress was mostly determined by the terroristic colonialist counterinsurgency. And even when the merger occurred without a Congress, the white ruling class colonial state wasted no time in attempting to destroy us, but we survived. In many ways, we thrive, although not without contradictions. The threat by then U.S. Attorney General John Mitchell to destroy the Black Panther Party before the end of 1969. This was a public declaration that Mitchell had made. And I believed him. I mean, you have to be familiar with that era, that time, because John Mitchell's wife was named Martha Mitchell. And this, the Watergate thing had begun to bubble, et cetera. And they had kidnapped Martha Mitchell, held her in a hotel or something and drugged her and, take her out of commission. This was a real, I mean, the contradictions were such, just overthrown, similar to, in many ways, to what we're looking at right now. And so the threat by then U.S. Attorney General John Mitchell to destroy the Black Panther Party before the end of 1969 had been realized for all practical purposes. Indeed, it is important to remember that the Black Panther Party was the main target and bore the brunt of the colonialist counterinsurgency, the primary factor of the Panthers' demise. This was the primary thing that killed the Panthers. And I want to say this because there are these revisionists who want to say that the Panthers died, especially what we saw in the wake of the death of the Black Panther Party, the destruction of the Black Panther Party, this white left movement to build a new communist party, et cetera, that developed a critique of the revolution of the 60s as part of what would validate this effort to build this new party. And they would criticize the Black Panther Party in particular because of its significance. It's really important. Its significance in the revolutionary moment. And so they made the defeat, the destruction of the Black Panther Party do more to personalities and stuff like that in the organization, which liquidated, minimized the war that was being made against the Black Panther Party all over the country, that this thing was happening, and also outside the country, Algiers and other places, etc. It's also interesting because the ones who did this were white communists who came to call themselves Maoists. And who was it that introduced Mao and Maoism to the United States? The Black Panther Party and the Little Red Book. That was the Panther Party who did that. You understand? And the guy who led this attack was a guy named Bob Avakian. One of them. He wasn't the only one, because there were were critiquing, using as a basis for their existence the assault on the Black liberation movement. But Avakian was a judge's son, right out of Oakland, California. Used to follow the Panthers. Every time the Panthers was someplace, he was there on the sidelines, being influenced. And then he became the most important revolutionary since Malcolm X. So this was the period of the government assassinations of several Black Liberation Army fugitives, the near assassination and arrest of Assata Shakur and Sundiata Acoli, as well as other anti-colonial African patriots of the Black Liberation Army, such as Herman Bell, Albert Noor, Washington, and others. The U.S. government aimed to systematically decapitate the revolutionary sector of our movement. George and Jonathan Jackson were executed by government agents. 43 rebelling prisoners and their captive guards were massacred in Attica prison, and more than 40 African prisoners were wounded by government troops at Florida State Prison, acts which had successfully followed the incarcerated revolution into the prison and set upon it with genocidal efficiency. So they had arrested all these people who were connected somehow to the revolution or trying to, and then they follow them into prison and start killing them off, follow the revolution into the prisons and start assassinating and killing people there as well. So although it was also a target of the vicious counterinsurgency of the 60s, suffering government infiltration, agent provocateurs, helicopter and armored vehicle attacks on our community base, massive arrests, beatings and assassination attempts directed at me as its leader, Jomo, was able to survive and lead the work to build the African People's Socialist Party in 1972. So, Comrade Director, where are we? Should I continue? What do? Comrade Akile, are you there? So on page 90, I am on the sub.
Over, Chairman, I'm here. I think my internet. Oh.
You're pointing. I mean, what?
I was saying the internet is chopping. I don't think she heard you.
So can you hear me? I was asking if I should continue. Are we at a place now where we should try to do some other things?
There's a lot of great discussion.
A lot of great discussion happening? Okay. Can you hear me, Comrade Akile? I'm waiting for leadership. Have they decapitated this meeting?
Hear me now?
Yes, but not now.
I think there's a little bit of a delay. My internet seems to be going in and out, and I have to get that worked on. But
Go ahead.
I was thinking this was a good place to stop at this section so we can start clean next week at U.S. government counterinsurgency.
On page 90?
Yes, on page 90. All right. So are you able to hear me okay? Am I coming through clear?
Yes, you are.
Okay, right on. All right. So thank you, Chairman and Huru comrades, and apologize for these technical difficulties. But thank you so much for just going through this second section of Counterinsurgency, Chapter 3, which is located in the book Vanguard, the Advanced Detachment of the African Revolution. This is what we've been reading, and you can locate this book at theburningspear.store. And so we're going to open it up for some questions and answers, Chairman. We've got lots of questions coming in, and we've got a little bit more time to deal with some of them today. So I want to quickly take us to our announcements section. And to kick us off, do we have Comrade Ikinge in the room?
Yes, she is in the room.
Uhuru, Comrade Ikinge, you want to tell us about the tour coming up and how people can donate?
All right, Uhuru, comrades, and a great study so far this morning, Uhuru. And I just want to say that we are very happy to announce that the Burning Spears publication of the chairman's new book, The Verdict is in, Reparations Now, is just about ready to go to the printers. This wonderful book will include most of the brilliant testimonies from the first tribunal on reparations to African people, held in Brooklyn, New York in 1982. Led by the African People's Socialist Party and Chairman Omali Yeshitela as the people's advocate, the tribunal will put the U.S. government on trial for genocide of African people and rule that African people were owed $4.1 trillion in reparations in the U.S. alone. The chairman used the Genocide Convention of the United Nations as the legal basis for the tribunal and exposed, again in 1982, that the colonial conditions of African people met every one of the UN's 5 qualifications of crime and genocide. It was during this time that the chairman determined that the party would make reparations a household word, which indeed it has become. Uhuru. And we are happy to announce that Uhuru Tours is ready to launch a tour for this very important book, which will go to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Newark, New Jersey, and New York in September, which is just around the corner. So we're using every Omali taught me to help us raise resources for the tour. And I want to thank right now Comrade Matum, Comrade Lisa, Comrade Penny, Comrade Michael, and Comrade Sarah, who have donated already. We have $115 left to raise of a $200 weekly goal. So I need a few more people to go into uhurutours.com/donate and help us get to our goal today. This is going to be just a fantastic relaunch of this book, and I'm excited, so I hope everyone is. Give, so that we can get to our goal and help get this book and the chairman's tour out in the world. Uhuru.
Well, which Lisa was that?
That's Lisa Watson.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, I should have said Lisa W.
Uhuru, Comrade Ikinge. And thank you so much for that announcement. And you guys can continue to donate to uhurutours.com/donate throughout the duration of this study. Continue to make your contributions. This incredibly powerful book, I'm very excited for it to hit the shelves. And as it's been stated already, the chairman's work to make reparations a household word, obviously, that is the case today. We see this question, being discussed all throughout the world by all different kinds of forces. And even if their analysis is off, intentionally or unintentionally, the fact is that the reason they're discussing it is because of this effort to make reparations a household word, which really kicked off in 1982 in Brooklyn, New York, with the World Tribunal hosted by the African People's Socialist Party. So you do not want to, miss this book. You have to get this book. You have to add it to your list of reads. So we're going to continue through our announcements before we get to the questions and answer portion. So join the counteroffensive to stop the FBI attacks on the African People's Socialist Party and the African liberation struggle. Donate or volunteer to the Hands Off Uhuru, Hands Off Africa Defense Campaign today. And for more information, go to handsoffuhuru.org to volunteer. Donate, sign the petition, and the emergency response pledge. Every Thursday at 8 p.m. Central Africa time, tune in live for the Hands Off Uhuru, Hands Off Africa, Africa Region broadcast. Watch and follow on Facebook, www.facebook.com/APSP Africa Region. Chairman Omali Yeshitela mentioned earlier today about some of the presentations and studies that were done by comrades in South Africa, occupied Azania, by comrades Asa. And you can also locate those videos, those studies on facebook.com/APSP Africa region. If you are in the northern region of the U.S., come to Clark Park in Philadelphia next Saturday, June 24th from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time. The One Africa, One Nation Uhuru Flea Market is one of over 50 economic development institutions and programs of the Uhuru movement. This dynamic market hosts 80 to 100 vendors monthly, offering a wide range of products from vintage goods, handmade butters and scrubs, food, and more. This long-standing market located in West Philadelphia promotes Black community control of commerce and economic self-determination. For more information, visit oneafricamarketphilly.org. Also next Saturday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, join a web event hosted by the Black is Back Coalition titled "The Message is Still the Same, Drop the Charges, Defend the Right to Free Speech." This event will discuss Chairman Omali Yeshitela's 2007 keynote presentation at an international conference in Spain, where he spoke about Africa in an unjust global world. Go to theburningspear.com/events to get the link to register for this important online event. Next Sunday, June 25th, join the Hands Off Uhuru, Hands Off Africa DC Organizing Committee, standing in solidarity with the National Network on Cuba's rally at the White House to demand Biden take Cuba off the list of state sponsors of terrorism, end U.S. economic terror toward Cuba, end U.S. imperialism and global terror. Hear from Hands Off Uhuru, Hands Off Africa DC organizers as they deliver a solidarity statement in defense of Cuba's right for self-determination. Find more information about this event at theburningspear.com/events. Register now for a special web event on Wednesday, June 28th. The title is America Found Guilty of Genocide, Reparations Now, and it's hosted by the African People's Solidarity Committee. Learn more about the revolutionary demand for reparations, why reparations are owed, and how white people can organize under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party to build a mass movement for reparations. Register at tinyurl.com/reparationsnow2023. Midwest region, come to St. Louis's own One Africa, One Nation Farmers Market, a program of the Black Power Blueprint to end food apartheid and build economic development in North St. Louis. The market runs from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. in our new, beautiful location, the historic O'Fallon Park, on the first Saturday of every month. The remaining market dates are Saturday, July 1st, August 5th, September 2nd, and then a special Halloween festival on October 28th. For more information, visit oneafricamarket.com. And again, announcing the new book, The Verdict is In, Reparations Now. You can pre-order your copy today at theburningspear.store. And make sure you like and subscribe to The Burning Spear TV on YouTube to catch every episode of the Omali Taught Me Sunday Study. And I'll go ahead and close out the announcements here and just conclude by again saying, make contributions today to bring the chairman to the Northeast St. Louis with The Verdict is in, Reparations Now by donating to uhurutours.com/donate. We have a $200 goal today, and I know that we can reach that. So go to uhurutours.com/donate. So now we're going to go ahead into some of our questions that have come in to the chairman. And of course, we want to acknowledge where people are tuned in from. So we have with us the Not So United Kingdom, Portland, Oregon, Huntsville, Alabama, Battle Creek, Michigan, Marion County, Georgia, San Diego, California, Lakeland, Florida, St. Louis, Missouri, Boston, Massachusetts, Largo, Florida, Cincinnati, Ohio, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Oakland, California, Fort Myers, Florida, Fresno, California, Gainesville, Florida, South Africa, Kokosi and Pedum's local branch, Richmond, Virginia, Collegeville, Pennsylvania, and Nairobi, Kenya are all tuned in with us today. Thank you, comrades, for joining us. So, Chairman and comrades in St. Louis, we're going to go ahead and take our first, which comes from Comrade Don.
Yeah, before.
Yes, Chairman.
Just an announcement, because I don't think you mentioned the Bethesda Cemetery Coalition I think on tomorrow, Juneteenth. They're having a really important event. I would hope somebody could put that up in the chat. I know we're going to be there supporting that work they've done, where the government has paved over an African cemetery the historic African cemetery, and there's been, fierce fight back being led in part by Sister Marsha Coleman Adebayo there in Bethesda, Maryland, which is sort of like Washington, D.C. So I would like, hopefully somebody can get information about how to contact with that. I know we're going to be there with her. And I'm hoping that people who especially in the northern region of our movement would make every effort to be there to support that as well. Sister Marsha has been with us historically, just a powerful force and quite supportive. Uhuru.
Uhuru. Thank you, Chairman. All right. So our first question came from Comrade Don on YouTube. It says, Uhuru Chairman, how do we utilize our understanding of the colonial relationship to raise the community's level of consciousness, re the mysticism between the quote unquote right and the quote unquote left? Also, I would like to know Chairman's principled perception of Dr. Cornel West's recent political maneuverings.
That's one way to put it. Thank you so much, Comrade Don. I do want to say that this question of right and left is something that's plagued sectors of our movement. Well, historically it has. It's different ways it's been problematic. And as you know, as this crisis in this country deepens, in the world, in fact, and we see that these growing fissures within the colonial society itself, this issue of fascism is something that we hear more and more about. And Trump is a proto-fascist, and before Trump, it was the guy McCain. Is that what his name was? It was the proto-fascist, and all these proto-fascists. And we're told consistently that we have to support the Democratic Party to oppose this fascism, or we're told we have to support this leftist entity to support fascism. And the fact of the matter is right and left. So you can have a right-wing colonizer and you can have a left-wing colonizer. And the fact is that you can still be colonized. And I've often used the example of France, which has created this whole narrative about being one of the fiercest anti-fascist, countries that you could find. They fought the Nazis, and they had, we're told, these forces who were underground fighting against the fascists there. But at the same time, they were fighting the fascists there. They were also killing people in Vietnam. They controlled Algeria and killing people in Algeria. And they controlled huge portions of Africa under colonial domination. So you had left-wing colonizers. And they were telling, and today we hear that we should support this entity or that entity, especially because we have to be afraid of the fascists. And I'm afraid of the colonized, the colonialists, period. You understand? So this notion that we select, that's where this whole idea it influences, and it is influenced by, the lesser of two evils. You got evil there, and that's the thing. And so, so we say we're looking at the evil of two lessers, and that the fact is that colonialism is colonialism, and there's no good for colonialism. And I don't give a damn what anybody says. There's no good slave masters. There's no such thing as a benevolent slavery, right? And so that's our point. So. And we do believe, though, however, that you have to understand the contradictions happening in the world and even among the colonizers. So you have to be able to recognize them and take advantage of differences and things like that. We have succeeded in peeling off a huge sector and growing sector of the colonial population in this country, who can now begin to see a way out of this relationship they have with the oppressed peoples of the world and with their own dirty, nasty ruling class. And they know they don't have to be for Biden or for Trump or anything like that. They can be for justice. They can be for freedom. They can be for socialism. They can be, and they get to that, they unite the struggle against colonialism and holds the whole thing up. So it's really important for us to understand that, and some people don't. And we've been condemned at different times, not so much today, But early on, especially with the relationship with the African Solidarity Committee, the Solidarity work, because them white people, etc. And it's as if somehow you can wish the white people out of existence, or you can ignore the existence of white people, which is just absolutely no plan at all, no strategy, no science to that at all. So, so there is a right and there's a left, but that right and that left rest upon a foundation of colonialism. And that's what is really important. Even the concept of right and left is a concept that comes from the colonizers who, and which themselves, as I said, emerged as a consequence of colonialism. I hope that was helpful, Don. If not, say something else as we move forward. Oh, Cornel West. What did he say about Cornel? I think that Cornel West is an interesting and entertaining person, and he has a great facility for language, and one day you can figure out what he stands for. You understand? Because this facility of language is it's almost obscurantist. He's for everybody. In many ways, he's for brother Trump and brother Biden and brother oppressor and brother oppressed and et cetera, and which is a typical kind of thing that people need to. You're gonna have to stop straddling the fence. I heard, for example, I was listening. Remember Obama when he became president, when he was elected president. There's a tradition that most people are not familiar with, that every year a U.S. president would go to this place where Confederate burial place, and they would lay wreaths for the Confederates. Do you know that? And so the question they raised is, now they don't have to say anything about it before, right? But now that Obama is president, they say, okay, what's Obama going to do? This became a public question. Is he going to lay a wreath on the graves of those people who tried to keep us enslaved? And so what Obama did was he laid a wreath on the people who tried to keep us enslaved, and then he laid a wreath for the Union soldiers who fought against them. So he was on both sides at the same time. And I saw an interview that somebody was playing the other day with Kamala Harris. She came out and made the statement, no, I am not going to just say something about just for black people, just for black people. And then she talked about how they had to pass legislation to make sure to deal against anti-Semitism and all this dirty stuff that they see happen to the Jews, et cetera. So they talk out both sides of their mouths, and somebody's got to be on the side of black people. And I'm hoping that Don, that's where we are. We're on the side of African people. We'll see if Cornel West can come up with any kind of program. Can Cornel West say drop the charges against the Uhuru movement? Can Cornel West condemn the FBI attack on our movement? Can Cornel West say the FBI has done this historically, starting with Garvey, with Paul Robeson, with the Black Panther Party, that they killed Fred Hampton and Mark Clark and Malcolm X, and therefore I'm standing solidly with the Uhuru movement, with Chairman Omali and the African People's Socialist Party. That's something that we need to hear coming from Cornel. Otherwise, we need to be able to distinguish Cornel West from everybody else who's running for office. So if he needs to distinguish himself. So we're waiting to see. We haven't heard enough from him. We've seen some interviews where he was, he said a lot of things that didn't make a statement of what he's for, except love. He's for love. Yes. He's for love. And in some ways, well, I lived on Haight Street once. And there are people here who are too young to remember the significance of that. But he's for love, etc. I know that for sure. Let's see if he's for black people. Let's see if he's for a genuine struggle. And I'm tired of those folk who can say that they recognize something called oppression, but they cannot recognize that when you talk about oppression, you talk about a relationship. You're talking about oppressed and oppressors. So you can't be for the brother oppressor and the brother oppressed too. You know, you got to say that you're on the side of the oppressed, and you got to say that not just in pure abstract terms. You know, it's not good enough just to be against Trump, or as he came out against Obama at some juncture. You got to be able to be explicitly for the interests of the people, and that has to be something that can be represented in more than just pure abstraction. So I'm waiting. Cornell may surprise us all. I want to be surprised by Cornell. I want to be blown away. I want to be blown away. I want to say, Brother Cornell, you know, West, yeah. So he may surprise us all. Yeah.
Uhuru, Chairman.
Uhuru.
Uhuru, and I'm going to be off camera so that hopefully my audio is coming through better. But want to appreciate Comrade Don's question and your response.
Where's Don located? Do you know? Does it say?
I believe Don is in the San Diego or SoCal area, as it's called.
Okay.
Out that way.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to go to our next question, but I also wanted to announce and send a thank you, a shout out to some of our donors for today. We had Comrade Nyendu, who was mentioned by the chairman earlier in Fort Myers, Florida, one of the founding members of the African People's Socialist Party, Comrade Nyendu. Also to the deputy chair, Ona Zanae Shatella, who donated today, Uhuru, Comrade Deputy Chair. We have Comrade Elizabeth, Comrade Kitty, Comrade Arthur, and Comrade KC, who all made contributions today. And through your donations, we have raised $210 today of our $200 goal. So we met our goal today, Comrade Uhuru.
Uhuru.
Uhuru. Oh, Chairman Don says Buena Park, California. I hope I was not too far away from that.
Okay, good.
Uhuru.
Uhuru.
Uhuru. So we had one second, I'm going back to these questions. Oh, also wanted to acknowledge some comments. This Comrade Diop, who says, Uhuru, the question you raised, Chairman, of agency on the part of the African proletariat to intervene in history, invaluable lesson taught by Huey through your presentation and ongoing ideological leadership. Also, the question of the role of athletics as a function of economic development may be worthy of exploration. Even Cuba enters forces in Olympics competitions. Piercy's role in yesterday was significant. The African nation can build economics through independent sports leagues. Didn't know if you wanted to, any comments?
I do want to deal with the issue of agency. I want to talk about the issue of agency. Because I think this is a really powerful question that gets missed by even some of the most progressive and revolutionary forces. I'm talking about honest forces now. This issue of agency. And I go back to one of the most influential forces, revolutionary forces in history, Karl Marx. And one of the most significant forces, because he made fundamental contributions to promoting science, to understanding the society itself. And Karl Marx is the person who tried to talk about, or who gave us this formula for the development of human society. It was like a sort of stair-step vertical development, according to Marx, and part of this formula resulted in human society. This is how he characterized human society, going through to this point that's recognized as feudalism. Europe lived under feudalism for like 1,000 years or so, where the majority of the people, had no rights, and the nobility decided every question, and the church was extraordinarily powerful as well, and the people were tied to the land, like peasants and serfs and things like that. So, but something happened. According to Marx, this development from feudalism then somehow got to capitalism. But this is, and you have to know more than what I'm saying now. You have to know a little more about this whole a Marxist concept of the development of human society. But he talks about this leap from feudalism to capitalism. Because everybody who even wants to start a small business knows that you got to have some startup capital to have meaningful stuff. So he said that to get to capitalism required what he characterized as a primitive accumulation of capital. He said this capital that I'm talking about, this accumulation of capital, did not come about as a consequence of capitalist production itself, but it's a starting point. He said it's hard to understand this because you can't have capitalist production without an accumulation of capital. And you can't have an accumulation of capital without capitalist production. So it looks like we're stuck in this vicious circle. How do we get out of here? Say in order to do that, we have to presuppose an accumulation of capital that did not come as a consequence of capitalist production, but was a starting point. And this starting point he defined as turning Africa, among other things, into a war for the commercial hunting of black skins. He's talking about the internment of the indigenous people in the Americas. He's talking about the assault on East India. That's India, as he mentioned, etc. He has just defined the colonial reality. He has just defined all these forces who constitute the basis, the foundation. In fact, he said that wage slavery in Europe required as a pedestal slavery pure and simple. That means the white workers who we characterize as wage slaves required as a pedestal slavery pure and simple in the New World. But what he has done as he's taken everybody else and made us auxiliaries to the development of Europe. Do you understand what I'm saying? He's taken away our agency. That's why the whole issue of the colonial mode of production is so important, because we are not just something that's significant to the development of Europe. We have agency as people. So our struggles that's happening every place in the world that's undermining the whole capitalist system because it's undermining colonialism. Anyway, and so everybody defines us as without agency. The FBI has said that they couldn't have done it. It's the Russians. We don't have agency. Agency is not conferred upon us. We confer agency upon ourselves. How? By assaulting the colonial mode of production. That is also the way the cold capitalist system comes under assault as well. And the other thing that's really important about this is recognition that it is through this colonialism that the definition of society itself is changed. Because it's no longer feudalism. You look at feudalism, you're talking about what is Europe. And they say capitalism came from feudalism. But feudalism is they're talking about Europe. And so now, for the first time in history, there is a world economy that starts with Portugal attacking Africa and the dispersal of African people all around the world, triangular trade, however you want to call it, connecting the world up into a single economy. It's a world economy that connects us all together in this process. Is a dialectical process that's here that rests upon a foundation of colonialism. And colonialism is not just something that happens to black people. The colonial mode of production is not just something that happens to black people, happen to Indian people, and I mean Indian, like East Indians, as Marx talked about here, or the indigenous people here. Colonialism is something that happens now to the world. All of us are locked into this colonial mode of production, just like it was assumed that capitalism locked us all into the single world that we're dealing with as well. Anyway, Comrade Diop, I'm struggling with it, just trying to convey what I mean about agency. But agency is taken away from us at the moment that we become a hyphenated human being, at the moment where we become something that exists for the purpose of pushing Europe into existence and into progress through this thing called primitive accumulation. Primitive accumulation for whom? For whom? It was a theft of resources, life, and everything from Africa and the colonized peoples of the world that created the whole damn social system. That destroys agency. even the perception of agency. That's why when even you look at Marx and other people, when they talk about the uncivilized people, they talk about this and that, but they cannot see that something happened to Angola. It didn't just happen when it happened to Africa. It didn't just happen, something didn't just happen to Europe. It didn't just happen to France. It happened to us. We are the foundation of the thing, but nobody, that's not how it gets described. That's why we have finally moved into an era where we become subjects of history and not simply objects of history. That's agency. That's what we're talking about. So Diop, I hope that was helpful. I hope it wasn't too confusing with that. We'll get better at saying it as we move forward. Uhuru.
Uhuru, Chairman. Well, that's really clear, very powerful, and we are now towards the end of today's program, but I did also want to acknowledge this comment from Comrade Kenya Yeshitela, who says, Happy Father's Day, Chairman. Uhuru.
Uhuru, I got this salute from my daughter, Kenya, and my wife, who hasn't called me daddy in a long time. That's a poor stab at humor. Wasn't that funny, Amanda? Thank you so much, comrades. I want to just, she talked about how, we define our own holidays and make our own holidays, but in the interim, we just say Happy Father's Day. And I want to send that salute out also, because African fathers get such a bad rap, generally speaking. But we saw them out there in the basketball court on yesterday, and we see them every day in our lives. We know them, So yeah, thank you, Comrade Director and Comrade Kenya. Uhuru.
Uhuru, Chairman. Well, that will wrap up today's Omali Taught Me Sunday study. I really want to salute your brilliant leadership, just again going through this powerful presentation on the question of counterinsurgency and deepening our understanding on all of these questions, including the counterinsurgency and its relationship to this colonial mode of production, how the whole world is defined and what the colonial powers do in order to keep the world locked into this situation, which requires the worst kinds of violence, humiliation, despair being made against the people. That is what we're confronted with. But these are the things that we are pushing back and struggling against. And despite all of their efforts, all of the evidence points towards our success and our victory. So really want to salute your leadership, Chairman. Also to the comrades, again, want to just shout out to Deputy Chair Onanzane Yeshitela, the Black Power Blueprint, and the incredible grand opening of the Black Power Vanguard's basketball court in North St. Louis, a project Black Power Blueprint. And to all of the comrades who are watching with us, shout out to the comrades in Africa, on the continent, watching in South Africa, in Nairobi, Kenya. Comrades, thank you for checking in with us today. And with that being said, we will continue this series of studying the counterinsurgency through Vanguard, the Advanced Detachment. We'll continue on next Sunday. So meet us back here, 10 a.m. Eastern time for the Omali Taught Me Sunday study. Make sure to like and follow the chairman on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and now Twitch, and subscribe to the Burning Spear TV on YouTube to catch every episode of the Omali Taught Me Sunday study. Uhuru, Vanguard up.
Relentless.